Here we go again. The Baltimore Ravens make a shocking decision. They bring back Deontay Johnson after claiming him on waivers from the Houston Texans. We talk about why the Ravens would do this, what it means for the team. We'll get into some Ravens updates, Zay Flowers injury stuff as well. A lot to get to on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this Wednesday evening, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe over there. Of course, we do have that 5-day-a-week of Ravens coverage for you, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Put out a show this morning about Deontay Johnson, and now here we are just about 12 hours later talking about it from a much different perspective. So we're going to dive into all of that. You can also tune in to us when we go live after every single Ravens game. And we obviously have a bunch of other different pieces of Ravens content coming your way each and every single day on this show. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers, place a $5 bet. You're going to start it with $200 in bonus bets. If you want to lose your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Let me tell you, I was not anticipating doing this whatsoever. You know, this has been a very busy day, a bunch of interviews, and obviously recording the Thursday episode of Locked On Ravens with Joe Marino of Locked On Bills in just an hour now. But we had to come on here to talk about this move, and I am shocked about it. Now, it makes sense in a vacuum, and we'll certainly dive into that over the course of this episode and obviously a little bit more tomorrow as well. But we literally just put out the episode today. If you haven't watched our episode from today, be sure to go back and watch it. We talked about Von Miller and him talking about some strategies to stop Lamar Jackson. And we also talked about Diontae and the whole saga with him in Houston. But here we are, in the Ravens have claimed Deontay Johnson. And let me tell you right off the bat, I never want to hear Deontay Johnson's name after this season. This has been the most exhausting saga that I think I've ever been a part of, and I'm including the Lamar Jackson contract situation, right? I'm including that. We have been on so many roller coasters with Deontay Johnson this season here in Baltimore, from them acquiring him to him saying, okay, it's going to be great, going to be awesome. And then obviously decently poor play on the field, the whole drama situation, and now he's back. So let's get into this. And again, as we always do, be sure to tell me where you're tuning in from on the lives. I really love hearing where everybody's tuning in from. We have a lot of people in the Baltimore community and the Maryland community, but also all across the country and all across the globe. So be sure to tell me where you're tuning in from. Would absolutely love to hear it. So let's just dive into the news. For those who don't know, Deontay Johnson is back in Baltimore. He was claimed by the Ravens off of waivers from the Houston Texans, who obviously got rid of him this past week. Now, here is the reason for this situation. And Adam Schefter illustrated this beautifully, so I'll just read off Adam's tweet here. It's a procedural move. So Johnson won't officially be awarded to the Ravens until after the Super Bowl because he's not eligible to play in the playoffs and yada, yada, yada. But he qualifies as an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And if he signs with another team this offseason, he factors into Baltimore's compensatory pick formula, potentially helping the Ravens obtain an additional pick in 2026. So again, has no ability to play this postseason. This is not because of Zay Flowers being injured. This was not made because of that situation. And Adam's saying he likely won't step back into the Ravens facility, but now, by some crazy way, he can help Baltimore in the offseason. And look, Eric DeCosta, an absolute mad genius with this move. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in depth tomorrow, but I want to obviously touch on it here as well. Compensatory picks, it's not a guarantee the Ravens get a compensatory pick in this situation. But I think it also goes a bit further beyond what the whole compensatory pick formula is. Now, I'm very curious, and I don't know if this will ever get released, but I'm curious to see if any other team actually claimed him. Wouldn't make sense for any other team to claim him because he's not eligible to play. So again, I know people are saying, well, Kansas City, the Ravens blocked him from Kansas City. I mean, technically they could have done that if they didn't release him. And I don't even think the Chiefs claimed him on waivers the first time. I think it was the Texans and the Chargers, right? Those were the two teams that claimed Diontae. But exactly, Rose outlining it here. It's all for the comp pick. He's ineligible to play in the postseason. So, yeah, Joe, last time we talked about Diontae, literally 12 hours ago. I mean, literally, I had said that if I ended off that segment of the show this morning saying that hopefully we don't have to talk about Diontae ever again. And here we are talking about Deontay Johnson again. So I agree with Ravens 76B more here was a slick and smart move, right? This is the reason why I think a lot of people would have preferred Baltimore to keep him in the first place. Now, I think they made the right decision by moving off of him. I think obviously Baltimore has benefited from that, even if it was not about Deontay's personality. And again, here's what the report said about Diontae. For those that missed the episode this morning or haven't heard the latest on why Diontae was released in the first place and is back with the Ravens, Diontae got released by Houston because of the exact same situation that happened in Baltimore. It just happened in Houston, where after the Texans beat the Chargers in the wild card round, you're supposed to be celebrating, you're supposed to be having a good time, looking ahead to next week. Apparently, Diontae was sitting in his locker or sitting at his locker, fully, in uniform, staring off into the distance, clearly upset, disgruntled by his lack of target/playing time. Multiple Texans veterans came over to try to console Diontae, lift him up. But again, like, you're celebrating with your teammates, and it's kind of awkward, I would assume, to have a guy in the locker room who's all pissed off about not having targets or not having catches. I mean, it's a team sport, right? And Robert Woods, Texans receiver, was asked about the situation, and he said that, look, everybody wants to be utilized, right? Everybody wants to have that, but this is the NFL, and, it's not always going to work out that way. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing Robert Woods there, what he said, but he said, I'm going to leave it at that. And yes, the Ravens brought back Deontay Johnson. They claimed him off of waivers. Again, a procedural move. He's not eligible to play in the playoffs, but since he was traded, so I think how this works is because since he was traded from Carolina to Baltimore, I believe they retain those comp pick rights, even if he gets cut, signed to another team, cut again, and is put back on the team. So they retain those rights because it was a trade, I believe. I believe this is what it is. So the fact that he was cut by Houston, no other team was going to claim Diontae. Like, again, I'd be shocked if another team did because he's ineligible to play in the postseason. And this, to me, is the other part. And, Kieran, I want to address this right here. We're about to keep him from Buffalo. Casey, you got a third-round comp pick for a dude that had one catch. So here's how the comp pick formula works. Obviously, it goes by contract. So depending on how big of a contract a guy signs, that is where the eligibility for whatever it is, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round comp pick comes in. Third, obviously, being the highest compensatory pick that you can get. And for those that don't know what comp picks are, compensatory picks are essentially a way, like to balance out whichever teams lose a bunch of free agents versus which teams don't. So if a guy gets a high yearly salary, if you lose that guy for nothing, but you have the rights to that player in terms of compensatory pick, you will get a reward essentially for losing that player. So, for example, the Ravens right now are eligible. You can only have 4 max, but they're eligible for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 compensatory picks. Obviously, the highest 4 will go to the Ravens. They eliminated one of those comp picks when they signed Derrick Henry. Now, how it works is depending on how high the value is, as I mentioned, that depends on whether you'll get a third-round comp pick, sixth-round comp pick. So there's actually a threshold for what minimum the contract has to be to actually earn a compensatory pick. I believe last year that number was right around $3 million. So, for example, the Ravens lost 3 non-compensatory pick eligible free agents: Delshon Phillips, who was $2.6 million, Tyler Ott, who was $1.46, and then J.K. Dobbins. So again, you see here on the chart, teams lost guys who had, like, for example, Pittsburgh lost Armon Watts, and that was $3 million. But then it also depends on a couple of other things. So it's not just APY, and then that's the only thing that counts in the conversation. So I need to make sure, and this is something we'll talk about more on tomorrow's show, what the actual formula is for it. But there's not a guarantee Diontae brings in any comp pick. And if it is a comp pick, it's probably going to be on the lower side of things. So I would assume that with the way that this situation went, it's not going to be a very high comp pick. I think Deontay Johnson has lost out on millions, and I would assume he probably only signs for the veteran minimum. And I don't know what that number is going to be during 2025. It could be enough for a 6th or a 7th comp pick, but I'm kind of setting expectations here to say that it's not going to be a 3rd. I don't think a team is going to place that much money into Diontae. Probably not a 4th, probably not a 5th. But man, I'll tell you, this whole situation with the Ravens and bringing back Diontae, I'm not even sure teams would think about doing this. I mean, obviously, Eric DeCosta is one of the savviest general managers in the league, and he loves his comp picks. He absolutely adores them, and for good reason. It essentially is a free pick to be able to go and do what you want with. And obviously, it allows you to free up more in terms of trading. Let's say you get a 6th-round pick for Deontay Johnson. That gives you more confidence to go out there and trade your 6th-round pick for somebody, and then you still have a 6th-round pick waiting in the chamber there. And John, he's not eligible to play in the postseason. I'll keep repeating it for those who come in or, haven't heard the news. He's not eligible to play in the postseason. He's not going to be officially awarded to the Ravens until after the Super Bowl. So this was not about Zay Flowers. And we'll get to Zay coming up here as the live goes on. But again, Diontae not eligible for the postseason. This was purely procedural, purely for the opportunity for Baltimore to get another compensatory pick. And that will be that. So we're going to have a lot more to dive into in the second part of the show here. We're going to talk more about the Ravens wide receiver position. We'll dive into Zay Flowers and his injury because there was an update on that situation as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We have a lot coming your way on this instant reaction. Impromptu. Was not expecting to do this tonight. Impromptu reaction of Locked On Ravens live. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable. FanDuel, official sports partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Ravens Live, instantly reacting to the Ravens bringing back Deontay Johnson, a move that I wasn't expecting. Really, no one was expecting, but the word of Diontae still having compensatory pick value to the Ravens certainly changes why the Ravens made this move. So appreciate everybody for being here tonight on Locked On Ravens. We did put out an episode this morning talking about Von Miller giving out strategies for Lamar Jackson and more about Diontae and that. I literally was like, okay, we're not going to talk about it again. And here we are talking about it again. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and subscribe and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And again, Diontae comp pick. That's really the only reason he's back in Baltimore. I would not expect the Ravens to even re-sign him, right? There's, I guess, the option that the Ravens could re-sign him. But let's be honest. It just didn't work out in Baltimore. And it's interesting for Diontae because I kind of outlined this scenario. And you can even talk about it from the Ravens' perspective, although I think the Ravens' younger wide receivers, it's not necessarily, I mean, Rashod's a 4th-year guy at this point, and Zay's a 2nd-year guy, but let's say you want to bring in a vet receiver to mentor guys, right? Like Deontay Johnson. He's a talented player, can get open, make some plays for you. And you have let's say Malik Neighbors, for example, for the Giants, or Brian Thomas in Jacksonville, or one of those players, or one of these young rookie receivers coming out of college this year. I wouldn't want to bring Diontae into my locker room, right? Again, apparently it's nothing about his personality. Apparently he has a bright, bubbly personality. And I think when the Ravens, I talked about this yesterday or this morning. Wow, I can't get my days mixed up. I talked about this morning where the Ravens, during that or after that Houston game, Diontae and the Texans get up, right? He was laughing, jumping around with Lamar, Isaiah Likely, Derrick Henry. I don't think it was like he was such a toxic person in the locker room where his teammates just flat out hated him. But when you refuse to go in a game or when you're pouting over your role, when everybody wants to have a big role and, it's about the team, it's about winning. And it's not there's no I in team. I know it's a very cliche saying, but there is no I in team. So if you're the Ravens, you have to be able to go out there and just figure, man, what is there for me? What do I want my career to be if you're Diontae Johnson? Is it about the money? Is it about the role? I mean, clearly it's not about winning for Diontae. I mean, if it was about winning, I feel like he'd be much more open to the idea of having a reduced role. But I just wonder what it could have been with the Ravens, right? I wonder what it could have been. Because Zay gets injured, that obviously would have opened up a huge role for him. And, again, it's not like Diontae was this all-world receiver when he was with the Ravens, but man, there would be a huge opportunity for Diontae now if he had just stuck to the plan. And this is not the first time Diontae has had locker room issues, Pittsburgh, Carolina, and now Baltimore, Houston. But even let's say New England, right? Drake May, great young quarterback, looking for probably some vet wide receivers in the offseason. If I'm Mike Vrabel and that team, I'm not bringing in Diontae. I don't want that to rub off on my players. So I think that Diontae, and multiple people have put it out this way, he has lost a lot over these last couple of months and kind of ruined his reputation. And honestly, I'm not sure if the talent is there, but I'm not sure if Diontae gets signed. This move is made procedurally for the possibility of the Ravens having a compensatory pick, right? It's no guarantee that he will actually be signed by someone or reach the threshold, depending on what the minimum comp pick money threshold is or whatever the thresholds are for it. There's no guarantee that ends up happening, but just the chance at it, I think it's a solid move. If he doesn't step foot in the Ravens facility again, no harm, no foul. I wouldn't expect him to, and Adam Schefter said as such, but it could be something. But again, and I agree with the point of okay, could it have kept him from a team, but he wasn't eligible to play in the postseason anyway after he got released. So it wouldn't have made a difference if he was kept from the Chiefs. The only thing in terms of being kept from the Chiefs is the Chiefs getting him and then re-signing him without losing a comp pick or having that happening, because you could keep him on the Chiefs and, maybe he goes into Kansas City and is like, oh, here's what the Ravens do here. Here's what the Ravens do there. That's the only thing. It wasn't about is he going to suit up in the AFC Championship game. And Justin making the point here, this is kind of what I'm saying, where I don't know if anybody wants Diontae because his attitude and his self-centered ability there. I mean, he's essentially burned 4 bridges. I'm counting the Ravens as one because I don't think that this is a long-term thing. So he's essentially burned 4 bridges. And guess what? Word spreads fast in the NFL. I mean, what if, for example, the Chargers wanted Diontae because of, his ability as a receiver, and they needed receiver help before the playoffs, right? But with options available in the offseason, if you're Jim Harbaugh, we know how close that Jim and John are, right? We know how close those two guys are. And you think Jim, if he calls up John and says, hey, is there anybody you'd recommend? You think John's going to recommend Deontay Johnson to Jim? Again, it's about connections in the NFL. And we know how tight-knit that Harbaugh tree is, for example. And that's just one example of the many tight ties and trees that go on at the NFL level. So Ravens versus, I agree, attitude lost him millions and playing time, because now if he gets signed somewhere, it's not even about the money at this point. It's about how much is he actually going to play. And if he's signed somewhere to be a 4th or 5th wide receiver, which might be the only thing he can get at this point, that's just going to start the whole thing over again, apparently, right? I think that this has potential for the Ravens. It's just not a guarantee that they actually get something back for it. But again, it's a savvy move. I love it. Not a lot of teams think about doing something like this. And for Baltimore and Eric DeCosta, it's more procedural things. And this is during the playoffs, right? This is when games are happening. You're getting ready to go. Now, my big thing, the funniest conversation to come out of all of this, in my opinion, if we're talking about kind of looking towards the future, and there's no guarantee the Ravens make the Super Bowl and win it, I'm just speculating purely. Does Deontay Johnson get a Super Bowl ring? If the Ravens win, would they give Deontay Johnson a Super Bowl ring? And I'm going to bring my Nuggets fandom back for a second. And I know some people don't like it, but I have to do it because it literally works. When the Ravens traded when the Nuggets, I can't even talk about basketball, right? When the Nuggets traded their guy that was not meshing in the locker room, Bones Highland, the Nuggets won the championship that season, right? The Nuggets won the championship that year. They opted to not give, it was Bones Highland. They did not give Bones Highland a championship ring. Bones was unhappy with his role. He was having public outbursts and was not doing good in the locker room. The Nuggets traded him. The Nuggets won the championship, and the Nuggets opted to not give Bones a ring. So now with Diontae, it's like, do they actually give him a ring? It's 50-50. The Ravens are, an organization that I feel like would give everybody who's involved a ring. But I think it is different with Diontae because of his situation. Like, we can honestly have that conversation. Like, Marcus Williams would certainly get a ring because he's still on the team. But would Eddie Jackson get a ring? Because guys who are on the team and then get cut or released or traded or whatever, those guys are still eligible for the ring. So, yeah, and Laura making the point, the NFL, the MLB, yes, you get a ring if you're on the team in any way. I think it is at the team's discretion what they do with that and how they apply that rule. But for Baltimore, they can make the decision to either give Diontae a ring or to not give him a ring. So I see a lot of people in the chat saying that they would not give him a ring. I feel like if I had to guess, they probably would. But again, the Ravens have to get there and win the Super Bowl, right? We're in the divisional round right now. This is a big game against Buffalo. And obviously, Deontay Johnson not eligible to play in the divisional round or any game thereafter. But there's still a lot to dive into in terms of Zay Flowers and just some overall Ravens updates in general. So be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot to dive into on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in with the strongest hiring data available. LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills to interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find higher quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have or how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when you pull the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on Locked On Ravens Live, Kevin Oestreicher, final segment, breaking everything down. Deontay Johnson back with the Ravens, claimed off the waivers from the Texans, and we're doing a little instant reaction live. I'm actually in the final segment here. First of all, we got a lot of people from a lot of different places, and it's so incredible how we've grown this community on Locked On Ravens. We have Salt Lake City, Columbia, South Carolina, Arkansas, Memphis, Nottingham. I mean, everybody checking in. But I'm going to open it up to some questions if you want to ask a question, because again, I'm not going to sit here and talk about Deontay Johnson for 30 minutes. That doesn't sound right to me. So if you have questions about the Ravens, even if it is about the Deontay Johnson situation, be sure to put that in the chat. And if you have questions and you're listening after the fact, be sure to put them in the comments below or just message me on social media, Twitter, Instagram. We can have a conversation about it. Love interacting with everybody there. And also just a procedural announcement for me. This is my procedural announcement, not the Ravens. Hit 11,000 subscribers today on this channel. We just hit 10,000 about a month ago. And that, let me tell you a quick story. That the whole situation for me with the Dixie Cup outfit, it has been an absolute nightmare. I've been trying to get this thing here for a month. It is coming from outside the U.S. I've had it canceled multiple times. I've been trying to get it back. It's been a nightmare. So it is going to come at some point here, but I'm just telling you. So we hit 11,000 before the thing even came in. It's a Dixie Cup outfit. I'm going to wear it for a full week. So I appreciate everybody for the support here on Locked On Ravens. And I guess we have the first question. Then Ryan Rip can find me on LinkedIn Jobs from Joe. That is not how he found me. At least I don't think so. I might have to have a conversation with him about that. But let's talk about Zay Flowers a little bit. First of all, Zay not practicing on Wednesday. He'll obviously have a couple more days to practice and hopefully get out there and play on Sunday. But again, I know that Ian Rappaport said that he was told he has an outside chance to play on Sunday against Buffalo. If it's a you got to rush him back situation, I'm just sitting him. I'm just sitting him. And I get it's a tough loss. Lamar talked about how it's a tough loss. And honestly might have even hinted at Zay not playing in his answer. I don't know. kind of just if you want to read super foreign things, I'm not going to, but I know some people did, and I saw it on social media. If you're going to rush Zay back from this thing, there's no point in playing him because you don't want this to become a much bigger deal than it already is. But as we've talked about on the show before, if this is a 3-week injury, let's say, or a 4-week injury, 2-week injury, in week 5, that doesn't matter. The guy's back in a month and you're like, okay, no harm, no foul. It's not a big deal. Even if it's like week 11, you're like, okay, cool, back by week 15, no problem. But when you're in the playoffs and this happens literally the week before, you're missing game of your season after game of your season after game of your season. And that's where it's tough, where a month absence can put you out until after the Super Bowl. 2 weeks now from this point can take you out until right at the Super Bowl. I don't know if Zay is going to be 100% for the entirety of this playoff run, if we're being honest. It kind of reminds me of the situation of Mark Andrews for the past couple of 1-seed runs for Baltimore, even Mark Ingram during that 2019 season, where they were injured, they came back, but they clearly weren't themselves. Marlon Humphrey last year, same thing. Still able to impact things and contribute, but in terms of Zay, he's a very shifty player. The cuts, the movement. I have a lot of trust in Rashod, Bateman, and the rest of these guys to go get the job done, especially with Derrick Henry and Lamar at the helm of that whole situation. Zay obviously adds an impact and a whole bunch of other elements to your offense, but it's not the end of the world if Zay doesn't play on Sunday, in my opinion. Not even in the world if he doesn't play against Kansas City if the Ravens make it that far and the Chiefs advance as well. But it is a loss. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that and say that, the Ravens are just fine without Zay and it means nothing. Of course it means something. He, in my opinion, is the Ravens' best wide receiver. And he adds another guy that you have to take into account and can get open in almost every single one-on-one play. So if I had to guess right now, I would probably say Zay does not play. But as John Harbaugh has noted, he does not have to practice to play. So we could be sitting here on Sunday morning, and there's obviously, a bunch of ways it can go, pregame workouts, and if he feels good enough, they could even activate him and play him as a decoy. And I think that could have some level of an impact. But you don't want to make it worse. I get it. You want Zay out there. I want Zay out there. Everybody wants Zay out there, right? But you don't want to have a situation where he comes back prematurely and this 3-4 whatever week injury turns into a year-long injury. So that's where I am with Zay. Again, you got to trust Rashod Bateman, trust guys like Tyler Wallace, Nelson Aguilar, etc. And I do. It's tough without Zay, but I think that Rashod and the tight ends obviously can pick up that slack, especially if Baltimore stays as committed to the run game as they have, and the run game is able to be as successful as they have over the course of, obviously Pittsburgh was the big game, but over the course of the season, don't get away from who you are. But, I guess it is it's a different conversation when it comes to the postseason because every mistake matters. And I think Zay obviously had the mistakes in the championship game last season, but I think he's learned from that. And this Ravens team is locked in. They are motivated. And, Karen, if this is what I wouldn't blame you if you feel like he only plays if we make the Super Bowl. I think that would give him a lot of time to recover. And obviously it's a risk week to week for him not playing. But yeah, I think this Ravens team has the world to play for. There have been a lot of conversations I've been asked on, interviews and the whole nine about how is this game bigger for Baltimore or for Buffalo? And in my opinion, yeah, there's a lot of conversation that goes on with, Buffalo, Josh Allen's only made the AFC Championship game once. And, there's a lot of other conversations about Buffalo and underachieving, Sean McDermott potentially getting fired if they lose this game. But this means everything for Baltimore. And I think Josh, with Josh's playoff stats being better than Lamar's, just in general, I think it means a lot for the Ravens and Lamar to kind of get this thing going and figure it out. So there's so much to talk about with this matchup. I think that I feel pretty confident in that. And we have a lot more on that coming up tomorrow on Locked On Ravens. We'll talk with Joe Marino of Locked On Bills, talk about some of Lamar Jackson's spicy comments and him getting real on Josh Allen, the whole 9 yards over there as well. But, kind of fun to come on here impromptu do this, even if, again, I never want to talk about Deontay Johnson again. And here we are talking about him just 12 hours after our show this morning, which, again, be sure to check that out. And Joe asking if I've made any Bills fans mad today. I went on Buffalo radio earlier, and I actually am going on a Buffalo show later tonight. So, I guess I haven't made the Buffalo media /fans too mad. Although, look, the reason Bills fans have kind of gotten upset is because, I like Lamar for MVP, but I like Josh as well. Like, I think Josh is awesome. I just think everything Lamar versus Josh, I do favor Lamar, even though there are some things that favor Josh. Both are incredible quarterbacks. And, I can't wait for this game on Sunday. And again, on the way out here, we have Orlando, Toledo, Ohio. We got Australia, worldwide Locked On Ravens here. We've built up such amazing communities, obviously here in video form and here in audio form on the actual show, but on social media, just hit 40,000 followers on Twitter. On Instagram, starting that back up, have hit 1,000, almost to 1,500 over there. So the support from everybody's been so incredible. And again, hitting 11,000 subscribers is another incredible milestone here for me on this channel. That's all I have for you here today, though, on this episode of Locked On Ravens Live. Appreciate everybody for being here and tuning in. Coming up tomorrow, of course, we're going to have our regularly scheduled program. We'll be talking Lamar Jackson, talking Bills Ravens, talking Josh Allen, and some more Deontay Johnson as well. So be sure to stay tuned for all that. Like and subscribe on the way out in video form and audio form. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.